A prominent symbol of Oklahoma's infrastructure problems is the state capitol. Its south entrance blocked off by barricades for the last 3 years to protect the public from falling limestone. The House and Senate are considering 2 different proposals to repair the Capitol. There's also a plan to begin fixing other state buildings and property. But it's become apparent Oklahoma lacks the resources to adequately fund all the repairs needed to maintain Oklahoma's crumbling infrastructure.
When the legislature passed House Bill 1910 last year, it was envisioned as a way to begin the process of making long overdue repairs to the Capitol while prioritizing infrastructure spending on thousands of state-owned properties across Oklahoma. Former Speaker of the House T.W. Shannon was the bill's author.
In the past, the model for state infrastructure has been simple. We allow it to crumble to the point of disrepair, and then we go out and we borrow money to fix it. Well, this year we're saying that's not the way we're going to do business in Oklahoma. This year we're going to pay for the needs that we have. We're going to develop an 8-year plan to address the other needs, and we're going to address the needs of this state capitol building immediately.
The newly formed Long Range Capital Planning Commission issued its first 8-year plan in December, noting that deferred maintenance or inattention from years of mismanagement of properties, misplaced priorities, ineffective policies, and inadequate funding has placed the taxpayer in a tenuous position. The plan went on to say that if infrastructure issues are not addressed, we will soon approach a tipping point at which the problem will grow at an ever-increasing rate, cost will escalate, and the Oklahoma taxpayer will be left with the equivalent of a disassembled and costly engine. Ben Davis is senior planner with the Office of Management and Enterprise Services Division of Capital Assets Management.
Our deferred maintenance backlog is so great that most of our projects are for simple replacement of a roof, replacement of windows that are ancient, sewer and water line replacement. I mean, these things are critical just for the buildings to keep functioning and to meet building codes.
The Commission received requests from state agencies for more than 1,500 projects, approving 536 of them at a cost of nearly $167 million. The greatest needs are in the Department of Corrections, which will receive nearly $10 million in fiscal year 2015. That includes more than $822,000 for roofing repairs at the Lexington Assessment and Reception Center, $949,000 for roofing repairs at Just Done Correctional Center, and more than $1.25 million for gas, water, and sewer line replacement at the Oklahoma State Penitentiary in McAllister. The Jim Thorpe Building, south of the Capitol, is also in line for more than $1 million in repairs and improvements.
There are requests to do some fire suppression upgrades in the building, replace fire doors in the stairwells, fire alarm system, replace some deteriorated paneling throughout the building.
The 76-year-old Thorpe Building was in far worse shape a decade ago, but Capitol architect Dwayne Mass says many of the major issues have already been addressed. The building's elevators drew attention, with many of those who worked there afraid to ride them for fear the elevators were unsafe.
Yes, there was some pieces of the shaft spalling away and landing on top of the elevators and scaring folks very badly. We looked through, we feel we got all the loose pieces. We structurally, 10 years ago, we feel that it was in a good structural position. To my knowledge, there have been no complaints since it was addressed 10 years ago.
The pedestrian tunnel, which enters the Capitol from the east side, still presents problems.
This pedestrian tunnel has severe flooding issues when it rains, very deteriorated, so the repairs to that would address those issues.
Standing water has forced officials to shut the tunnel down from time to time. The Commission has allocated $150,000 to begin making repairs to the tunnel, but a long-term fix is expected to cost up to $2.5 million. Funding for all the projects is scheduled to come from the Maintenance of State Buildings Revolving Fund.
Last year, the legislature appropriated $30 million as seed money to kind of get that fund going. The fund is used solely for the repair and maintenance of state-owned buildings. They also changed the law last year to require that any sale of underutilized properties that the state owns, sales proceeds from those properties must be deposited into the fund to be used to repair other state buildings.
Davis admits proceeds from sales of state properties will fall far short of what's needed to repair everything that needs to be fixed.
I think it's going to provide some funding, but I don't believe it's going to be enough to cover all of the state's capital needs. We have significant deferred maintenance issues throughout the state. The state has over 7,000 buildings that it owns. So right now we're seeing limited influx of money from sales of underutilized properties.
Sales of state assets are further complicated by the poor condition of some properties, like the State Capitol Publishing Museum in Guthrie, which has been closed due to inadequate plumbing and a broken heating system.
And the other issue with underutilized properties is there is a lot of environmental issues such as mold, asbestos, lead contamination within the old buildings that has to be remediated before we can sell those, and that costs money, of course.
Davis says it's clear the state will have to explore other funding options, including issuing bonds. 2 years ago, lawmakers shot down a proposed $200 million bond issue to fund repairs to the Capitol building and other structures in the Capitol complex. Last year's bill to fix the Capitol was found unconstitutional by the Oklahoma Supreme Court. This year, both the House and Senate have plans that include bond issues. House Speaker Jeff Hickman is the author of House Joint Resolution 1033, which would put a $120 million bond package up to a vote of the people in November. Hickman says the last time a bond issue came up in the House, it only garnered a handful of votes.
And the message that I had from that experience, and also from talking to our caucus, was that they wanted to look at some different alternatives. And there are those that argue that bond issues should go to a vote of the people. And there are those that say, no, there's a Supreme Court case that makes it clear that the legislature can do this.
The Senate measure calls for a $160 million bond issue, which includes $40 million for so-called soft cost.
You're going to have to relocate some employees. Down in the basement and some other floors, you're going to have to move some of the employees for a time period to other buildings in the Capitol complex or in the Capitol building.
Senator Kyle Loveless is one of the authors of the Senate plan. Loveless says aside from price, a major difference between the House and Senate versions is that, unlike the House, the Senate bill does not call for the bond package to be put to a public vote.
My concern over giving it to a vote of the people would be what happens if they vote no. The Capitol is still going to need to be repaired. Then the question is, well, how do we pay for it?
That was the argument last year about vote of the people, and here we said a year later. So I think if we continue to say, well, we can't do that, it's going to take too much time. Well, if we'd done that 4 years, 8 years, 10 years ago, we would have already had this done. So I think we have to have that option available.
Regardless of the plan, lawmakers agree something must be done soon.
The Capitol architect came to our caucus meeting just about a month ago, and he said, I don't know if it'll be this week, this month, or this year, but there will come a time in a very short time frame when you go to flush a toilet in this building and nothing's going to happen. That's a problem when you have thousands of visitors coming into this building.
With thousands of people expected at the Capitol for an education rally on Monday, those fears could be realized all too soon.